You spend your nights saving lives, and come home to find your own being destroyed by the very people who claim to protect the neighborhood. That's what happened to me, Jake Thornfield, a paramedic who thought he'd finally found peace in a quiet Phoenix suburb. But peace doesn't last long when your HOA president is a sociopath with a clipboard. And this is the story of how she broke into the wrong man's life and unleashed a storm she never saw coming. It started at 4 in the morning. I was still in my ambulance gear, hands shaking from pulling a teenager out of a mangled wreck, when I walked through my front door and realized someone had broken in. Drawers open, tools missing, muddy footprints in my kitchen. At first, I thought it was random theft, until I checked the camera feed. And there she was, Brenda Hutchkins, 52, HOA president, blonde curls sprayed into immobility, creeping through my house with a crowbar like she was on a mission from hell. What Brenda didn't know was that my partner, Rex, an 85-pound retired K9 from the Phoenix PD, was home. And Rex doesn't do well with uninvited guests. The footage showed everything. Brenda prying open the back door, whispering to herself, stepping inside like she owned the place. And then Rex appearing out of the shadows, growling low enough to shake the walls. The rest? Let's just say she learned why you don't mess with a man who spends his nights fighting death and his days cleaning up after monsters. But the story didn't start there. A few months earlier, I'd moved into Meadowbrook Estates, picture-perfect suburbia, where every lawn looks the same and everyone waves like they mean it. After the divorce, I just wanted quiet, a place to rebuild. The HOA brochure promised peaceful living and community spirit. Instead, I got Brenda, a self-appointed queen of compliance who walked the streets every morning at 8 a.m., heels clicking like a metronome of doom. She fined people for mismatched mailboxes, unauthorized wreaths, even garden gnomes. Her smile was pure venom, the kind that says, "I enjoy this." When a few break-ins hit the neighborhood, I installed 4 small security cameras. Nothing fancy, just basic protection. 2 weeks later, I got a certified letter, a $150 fine for unauthorized exterior modification. You'd think I'd built a watchtower. At the HOA meeting, I tried to reason with her. The room reeked of burnt coffee and fear. 20 people sat in silence as Brenda smirked behind a folding table like a dictator in designer heels. "Mr. Thornfield," she said without looking up, "some people think the rules don't apply to them." Bang, gavel down. Meeting over. No discussion, no vote, no justice. That night, walking to my truck, I noticed my neighbor Luis, a Navy vet in a wheelchair, taping his own violation notice to the trash can. Non-compliant accessibility ramp. Down the street, Sam Walker, a Marine who'd just buried his wife, was fined for an improper flag display. Another neighbor's gnome was apparently a security hazard. 4 veterans, 4 fines, all targeted by Brenda. That's when I realized this wasn't about keeping lawns neat, it was about control. And anyone who didn't fit her perfect picture of suburban purity became an enemy. So I fought back the only way I knew how, by getting backup. That weekend, I adopted Rex, a retired K9 who'd spent years tackling criminals twice his size. His presence filled my empty home with something I hadn't felt in a long time: safety. When Brenda saw him lounging on my porch, tail wagging, she filed another complaint within hours. Dangerous animal, immediate removal required. Rex's biggest crime: licking kids through the fence. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just harassment. This was obsession. Days later, another letter arrived. This one labeled Emergency Resolution 2024-07. She gave me 48 hours to remove my cameras or face $500 daily fines. She even threatened to put a lien on my property. But Arizona law requires 72-hour public notice before any HOA meeting. No notice, no meeting, just Brenda's fake authority. So I went to the one woman scarier than Brenda, Dolores Martinez, retired paralegal and neighborhood watchdog. Her kitchen smelled like tortillas and fury. She read the letter, snorted, and said, "Mijo, this witch is making up her own laws. The board hasn't even existed for months." She pulled records proving Brenda forged meeting minutes, signed resolutions herself, and even used an expired real estate license. Still, Brenda kept pushing. A few nights later, I came home after a 24-hour shift, smelling like diesel and adrenaline, only to find Brenda in my driveway with a greasy guy she called Inspector Carl. They started taking pictures, measuring my fence, even testing my door handles. That's when Rex exploded, a low growl that could stop your heart. I grabbed my phone, hit record. "For the record," I said, "this is unauthorized entry." Carl backed off. Brenda smiled that icy smile. "We'll be back, with proper authorization." And she did. At 2 in the morning, the cameras caught Carl alone, sneaking around my house with a flashlight, checking locks and peeking through windows. That's when I realized. This wasn't HOA business. This was burglary prep. Dolores ran Carl's name, unlicensed handyman, prior arrests for trespassing and theft. Her inspector was her boyfriend. The puzzle pieces snapped together. Brenda wasn't enforcing rules. She was scouting homes to rob, and she just picked the wrong house, because while she thought I was a tired paramedic she could bully, I was documenting every move. And Rex, my calm, loyal soldier, was about to get the most important mission of his career. The next few days felt like standing in the eye of a storm. Everything quiet on the surface, but you could feel the tension humming beneath it. Brenda had stopped taping violations to my door, which only meant one thing. She was planning something bigger. The calm before chaos. I'd spent 15 years as a paramedic, learning to read situations like that. You could sense when disaster was about to strike, the way the air gets heavy before lightning splits the sky. So I waited, cameras rolling, Rex always at my side, his eyes tracking every shadow on the street like he already knew the danger coming for us. 3 days later, it hit. A certified letter, her favorite weapon, landed in my mailbox like a hand grenade wrapped in bureaucracy. Emergency Resolution 2024-09. Immediate removal of security equipment and dangerous animals. Failure to comply will result in daily fines and property lien enforcement. The nerve. It was signed only by her, no board members, no witness, just a forged authority that reeked of desperation. Dolores, my paralegal neighbor, confirmed what I already suspected. Brenda was running this HOA alone after scaring off every other board member. No votes, no quorum, no legal standing. Just a lonely tyrant with a Lexus and a god complex. But Brenda wasn't just drunk on power. She was cunning. Thursday afternoon, after another brutal 24-hour shift, full of overdoses and wrecks, I came home to find her standing in my driveway again. This time, she'd brought that same inspector, Carl, the grease-stained rat with the eyes of a thief. "We're conducting a required property assessment," she said in that syrupy, fake official tone. Carl started snapping photos of my home, tugging at door handles like he was testing which one might give. Inside, Rex's instincts kicked in instantly, a thunderous growl deep enough to rattle the glass. I stepped between them, holding my phone up. "For the record," I said, "you are attempting unlawful entry." Brenda didn't flinch. She just smiled. "Emergency resolutions grant us full access." That's when I realized she wasn't bluffing anymore. She was casing my home for a break-in. And this time, she was using HOA paperwork to cover her tracks. That night, reviewing the footage, my stomach turned cold. Carl had come back at 2 a.m., flashlight in hand, peering through my windows, checking the back gate, moving like a burglar who'd done this before. I had the proof now. Time-stamped, high-definition evidence. Dolores ran a background check the next morning and confirmed it. Carl Brennan, prior convictions for burglary and trespassing, Brenda's live-in boyfriend. The so-called inspector was a criminal. That's when the truth clicked into place. Brenda wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was targeting it. Veterans, widows, minorities. Anyone who couldn't fight back. She'd fine them, harass them, and push them until they sold their homes below market value. Then her boyfriend's company would conveniently buy them cheap, flip them, and pocket the profit. It wasn't HOA enforcement. It was organized theft. But Brenda made one fatal miscalculation. She underestimated how dangerous a calm man can be when you push him too far. I didn't go to war with words. I went to war with evidence. Every fine, every notice, every forged letter. I logged them, photographed them, and time-stamped everything. Dolores built a legal file thicker than a phone book. We were quietly building a case while Brenda thought she was winning. Then came the police visit. Monday morning, 2 Phoenix PD officers knocked on my door while I was still wearing my uniform, still smelling like the metallic tang of adrenaline from my last rescue. "Mr. Thornfield," one said, "we need to discuss a complaint." Brenda had filed a report accusing me of threatening her, claimed I'd yelled at her during a confrontation the previous day. I almost laughed. I'd been on duty for 30 straight hours at Phoenix General Hospital. My GPS-tracked ambulance log proved I hadn't been within 10 miles of her. When I showed them the timestamps, the younger officer's expression shifted from professional to disgusted. She was trying to use law enforcement as her personal army, and that backfired beautifully. I played them footage of her boyfriend prowling around my property at night. Their posture stiffened. Cops hate being manipulated, especially by self-proclaimed authority figures like Brenda. They left without further questions. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes when she realized the badge she'd been hiding behind was no longer on her side. After that, things escalated fast. Dolores dug deeper and found out Brenda's real estate license had expired 6 months ago. She'd been signing legal HOA documents with an invalid credential, a federal offense. Then we uncovered the bombshell. The emergency board resolutions she'd been sending weren't filed anywhere in state records. They were completely fabricated. There hadn't been a legal HOA meeting in almost a year. This woman was a one-person dictatorship pretending to be a government agency. I'd seen plenty of delusional people on my ambulance runs, but Brenda was something else. A narcissist with paperwork and power. By week's end, the situation turned from infuriating to dangerous. Thursday night, around 3 a.m., Rex went into full alert. His bark wasn't the mailman kind. It was the sound of a trained combat dog sensing a real threat. I checked my cameras and froze. Carl again, creeping across my yard with something in his hands. When I zoomed in, I saw him scattering wilted plants and dumping trash around my mailbox. It took me a moment to realize what he was doing, staging violations. The next morning, like clockwork, I got 3 fresh HOA notices. Improper waste disposal, failure to maintain landscaping, and neglect of curb appeal. She'd fined me another $600 for messes she'd literally created herself. That's when the rage stopped being anger and turned into focus. You don't fight someone like Brenda with emotion. You fight her with precision. So I called in professionals. Desert Guardian Property Management, a veteran-run firm specializing in military housing, agreed to inspect my property. When their lead investigator, Maria Santos, reviewed the staged photos, she burst out laughing. See that? She said, pointing at the time-stamped soil in Brenda's pictures. Fresh potting mix, not desert dirt. They planted this garbage on purpose. She signed an affidavit confirming the violations were fabricated and agreed to testify if needed. Her report alone could have buried Brenda, but we weren't done yet. Because every lie Brenda wrote, every fine she forged, every rule she broke was becoming another brick in the wall, closing in on her. Then came the breaking point. And it hit harder than I ever expected. One afternoon, Luis wheeled over from next door, his face pale. "Jake," he said quietly, "that woman just tried to have Rex seized." My stomach dropped. Animal control was parked outside. Brenda had filed a complaint saying my dog attacked her during an HOA inspection. I rushed outside, pulling up the security footage right there on the curb. The officer watched silently as the video showed Brenda walking up to my fence, blowing kisses and taunting Rex while he sat calmly inside my yard. Not one growl, not one step forward. The officer turned to her, expression hardening. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "this is a certified police K9. Filing a false report about a service animal is a federal offense." Brenda turned red, sputtered and stormed off. That should have ended it, but she wasn't done. A few hours later, Luis called again, his voice shaking with anger. "She offered me $500 to take Rex for a few days while you're at work. When I refused, she threatened to call the VA and report me for fraud." He'd recorded the whole conversation. Brenda's voice, crystal clear, offering a bribe and threatening a disabled veteran's benefits. That was the moment her petty harassment became a federal crime. She had no idea that every word out of her mouth was being documented. And every move she made was digging her own grave. By the time the sun set that night, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every veteran, every widow, every neighbor she'd bullied. I'd seen enough broken bodies to know what evil looks like up close. And Brenda Hutchins wore it like perfume. But she was about to learn that when you push good people past their limit, they don't break. They organize. And Rex, sitting beside me on the porch that night, ears perked toward the street, seemed to understand what came next. Because this wasn't a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was a war. And we were done playing defense. The night after Brenda tried to have Rex seized, I sat awake on my porch, watching the desert wind stir the dust across the quiet cul-de-sac. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but my mind burned hotter than ever. She had crossed every line a human being could cross. Lying, bribing, and threatening the people who'd served this country. But the moment she went after my dog, and then my daughter, it stopped being harassment. It became war. The kind that doesn't end until one side is completely destroyed. The call came the next morning while I was cleaning my gear for another shift. My ex-wife's voice shook through the phone. Furious, scared, confused all at once. "Jake, what the hell did you do?" "Some woman called family services. Said you're unstable, that you have PTSD, and keep a dangerous attack dog around your daughter. They're opening an investigation." The words felt like someone punched the air out of my lungs. Brenda had gone too far. She was using my career and my child as weapons. I stood there in my living room, uniform still on, Rex lying at my feet, and I realized I was staring down a sociopath with nothing left to lose. That night, I gathered my allies. Dolores arrived first, arms full of files thicker than any legal brief I'd ever seen. Luis rolled in next, laptop open, already cross-referencing property records. Pete Morrison, the Air Force retiree I'd barely spoken to before, surprised everyone by walking in with a box of his own. Turns out, Pete had worked 20 years in Air Force investigations. Fraud, extortion, racketeering. His specialty. He spread his evidence across my kitchen counter like a general planning a campaign. "Jake," he said quietly, This woman's part of something bigger. Same scams, 6 other neighborhoods. She moves in, gets power, then bleeds everyone dry. That's when we called in the cavalry. Through Pete's contacts, the FBI's white-collar crimes division got involved. Special Agent Sarah Zephyr joined our next meeting through a secure video call, her voice calm and precise. "What you've uncovered," she said, "matches an ongoing investigation into multi-state HOA fraud targeting military families. Brenda Hutchkins isn't just a tyrant. She's part of an organized network." My blood turned cold. Brenda wasn't just trying to ruin lives for pleasure. She was part of a machine designed to steal from veterans while pretending to protect them. The operation took shape over the next few days. We gathered every shred of proof: the fake resolutions, staged photos, bribery recordings, expired licenses, and financial records. Maria Santos from Desert Guardian provided expert reports showing every fabricated violation. Dolores handled the legal documentation, building airtight evidence chains. Luis mapped Brenda's behavior patterns, her drive-by times, her surveillance habits. Rex, meanwhile, had gone from guard dog to silent sentinel, his ears twitching at every sound, his instincts locked on alert. We knew Brenda's next move would come soon. She was desperate, broke, and cornered. The trigger came from an unexpected source: the IRS. Dolores discovered Brenda owed over $180,000 in back taxes, and the government had filed seizure notices on her property. She was about to lose everything. That's when desperation turned to recklessness. Federal agents intercepted a call between Brenda and Carl, discussing valuable equipment inside my home and a plan to clear it out before Monday. She wasn't just planning to rob me. She was planning to burn the evidence afterward for insurance money. That's when Agent Zephyr said the words that sent chills through the room. "We're not dealing with harassment anymore. We're dealing with attempted arson and potential homicide." So, we set the trap. I announced publicly that I'd be away for 3 days on an EMT training course in Tucson. My truck was parked out of sight. The house was dark, blinds drawn. Rex was secretly staying with Luis, while the FBI installed motion-triggered cameras, infrared sensors, and hidden mics inside my home. My property had become a federal surveillance zone, disguised as a vulnerable target. From Luis's garage, we could monitor every corner of my house in real time. The air in that garage was thick with quiet determination. The smell of coffee, desert dust, and payback. Friday night, she took the bait. Brenda's white Lexus rolled past my house 6 times between sunset and midnight. Carl's truck appeared later, parking 3 blocks down. Through the cameras, we watched them whisper in the dark, flashlights flickering as they crept closer. Brenda moved like she'd done this before. Gloves, crowbar, tool bag. Carl crouched at the back door, his lockpicks gleaming under the moonlight. Inside, the hidden mics picked up his voice. "Dog's gone. Cameras are disabled. Easy score." That was his last mistake. When the crowbar touched my doorframe, Rex erupted. His bark thundered through the house, a trained K9's war cry that could stop your heart. Carl stumbled back, cursing, and Brenda hissed, "You said he wasn't here!" But before they could run, the night exploded in blue light and chaos. Federal agents poured in from every direction, shouting commands that echoed through the cul-de-sac. "FBI, hands on the ground!" Carl dropped instantly. Brenda tried to bolt, but she didn't make it 3 steps before an agent tackled her onto the gravel. The look on her face, shock, betrayal, disbelief, was the most satisfying thing I'd ever seen. By sunrise, the entire neighborhood was awake. News vans lined the streets, cameras flashing as Brenda and Carl were led out in handcuffs. Channel 12 caught me walking Rex along the sidewalk, reporters shouting questions. "Mr. Thornfield, how does it feel to see justice served?" one asked. I looked straight into the lens, Rex sitting tall beside me, and said, "Feels like the neighborhood's finally safe again." But the story didn't end with their arrest. It only began. Because what Brenda had done here, she'd done to dozens of families across 6 states. And now, the truth was out. The emergency HOA meeting that followed was standing room only. 200 residents crammed into a hall built for 100, the air buzzing with fury and relief. Dolores, now acting president, stood at the front, gavel in hand. She laid out the evidence with surgical precision. The forged resolutions, the fake fines, the bribes, the insurance fraud. Gasps rippled through the crowd as she read off numbers. $2.3 million in stolen funds. 47 families driven from their homes. Agent Zephyr confirmed it all, her voice steady as she announced federal charges. Mail fraud, wire fraud, racketeering and civil rights violations against veterans. Brenda's empire had turned to dust overnight. That day, we voted to dissolve the old HOA and rebuild from scratch. Luis was elected president by unanimous decision. Pete became head of security, and Dolores stayed on as legal counsel. Our first act, the Military Family Protection Covenant. A new rule set guaranteeing no veteran or family would ever be targeted again. We streamed every meeting online. Transparency became our shield. Neighbors who'd barely spoken for years started helping each other again. Front yards turned from battlegrounds into barbecue spots. And Rex, our 4-legged guardian, became a local legend. Months passed. The lawsuits came and went. Brenda got 4 years in federal prison, ordered to repay nearly $3 million. Carl got 18 months and a lifetime ban from any HOA involvement. But their real punishment wasn't the sentence. It was watching our community thrive without them. Meadowbrook Estates became stronger than it had ever been. Veterans' families received restitution. Karen, the widow Brenda had nearly bankrupted, used her settlement to pay off her house entirely. Luis's granddaughter got the first scholarship from our new community fund, Rex's Fund, to study veterinary medicine. The irony was perfect. The dog Brenda tried to destroy ended up helping others heal. A year later, I stood in my backyard, flipping burgers while Rex played with neighborhood kids. The desert sky glowed orange as the sun went down, and laughter filled the air. The kind of sound that makes you realize peace isn't something you buy. It's something you fight for. When the reporter from Channel 12 returned to film a follow-up, she asked what I'd learned through all of it. I looked out over the yard, at Luis smiling by the grill, at Dolores chatting with parents, at Rex sprawled in the grass surrounded by giggling children. And I said, the best revenge isn't getting even, it's building something beautiful out of what they tried to destroy. Rex barked once, sharp and proud, tail thumping like a victory drum. Brenda's reign had ended. But the legacy she left behind, a neighborhood united, veterans protected, families standing shoulder to shoulder, that was the true ending. Because evil only wins when good people stay silent. And we didn't. We stood up, documented everything, and fought back together. So if you're watching this, remember, protect your home, protect your neighbors, and never let fear win. Because sometimes justice wears a uniform. And sometimes it has 4 legs and a wagging tail.